Welcome to your Wednesday Fictionista. Eventually I will stop the fiction that I'm actually doing anything on Wednesday and admit that it's Thursday, but this will not be that week. I'm Kim Alexander, and this week we're talking about swearing. Now I, like most of my fellow Fictionistas, have a notorious potty mouth. The funny thing is, I was a radio DJ for at least 20 years, and I never, ever swore while I was on the air. It's the weirdest thing. It's like a switch goes off in your head, and I physically couldn't do it. Now, what I'm doing right now feels like an extension of the work that I used to do, so there will be no swearing in this video. Now, I know if you're writing young adult, you have to be very careful about which swear words you elect to use, if in fact you use any at all. Now, I'm not working in YA, although many of my characters are in fact young adults in their early 20s and late teens. But because I'm writing a fantasy series, I find that I have a very different set of restrictions. My books are actually set in two worlds. Like I said, it's a fantasy series. So let's start with Mistra, which is a little bit like late 1890s Washington, D.C. I live in Washington, so I know the layout pretty well. The residents are human, but they're not us. They're not Earth human. I decided to leave the big two alone. You know which ones I'm talking about. Used judiciously, they're always very effective. This culture is not monotheistic, as some of us are, so my characters wouldn't say something like, "Oh my God." And no one would say, "What on earth," for that matter, either. I got away with that by saying, "What in the world?" My human heroine loves to say shocking things, and she had a lot of fun teaching her demon boyfriend how to swear. The results were actually quite mixed. The other world, the demon world of Eris, where he comes from, had a different set of challenges. In a way, it was a lot easier because I could just make things up. Making up swear words is a blast. But then you have to wonder, do they have polite and slang ways of using these words, ways of referring to their genitalia, for instance? And what do they say instead of, "Oh my God"? And you have to have something to call out while you're having sex. It's a desert community, so what I ended up doing was taking a lot of Middle Eastern language derivatives, run them through Google Translate, picked out the ones that I liked the sound of, and changed the spelling and changed some of the pronunciation. So none of the words are actual words that I used. The words I ended up using turned out to be very, very important to the plot, and that sort of came as a surprise to me as a non-outliner. The demon language has a lot of words that have double meanings. Like, I didn't invent a whole language, but there's a lot of words from the Eris vocabulary that I end up using. Like the first word that I invented, rushta, which means excrement. It also refers to sand, something that the people of Eris living in this desert world have an abundance of, but consider having very little value. So swearing isn't just dirty talk. It's also a really good way to find out what the world that you're in is like. As you explore it, you'll find out by the language that the people use what's important and what's forbidden. So next week, speaking of things that are forbidden, interspecies scorping. Figure it out. So next week, sex and writing on the Fictionistas. And before I go, I have to say congratulations, first of all, to fellow Fictionista Daphne. Her book cover, The Girl's Guide to the Apocalypse, was just released, and it is beautiful. And our fellow Fictionista K.N. Lee, congratulations on the release of her baby, who has just entered the world and is quite beautiful. And I'll see you next week, maybe on Wednesday.